Good afternoon, Dr. Mondejar. I'm here to interview you about your opinion on the ongoing Hong Kong ASEAN FTA negotiations, and of course your research. First, would you tell us briefly about the background of the Hong Kong ASEAN FTA negotiations?
Okay, at the moment there is an FTA between China and ASEAN, and Hong Kong is not part of that, even if Hong Kong is already part of China. So Hong Kong decided to ask China if Hong Kong can be made part of that FTA. When ASEAN heard it, ASEAN suggested instead to Hong Kong that ASEAN would prefer to have a separate deal with Hong Kong rather than Hong Kong joining China. And actually, ASEAN acted very quickly. So when Hong Kong found out that that's the interest of ASEAN, so Hong Kong decided to apply formally and to begin the negotiations. And in a matter of months, ASEAN decided to begin the rounds of negotiation. The thing is that ASEAN is composed of 10 countries, so therefore all the 10 countries have to agree on how this matter should proceed. So they have done the first round. A second round is forthcoming next month, November 2014. And the objective is to complete this deal by 2016.
Okay. How important are these negotiations for Hong Kong and for Southeast Asia?
In the past, it was informally important. Now it is becoming more formally important because Hong Kong is the host of a good number of labor coming from Southeast Asia. And then Hong Kong has always served as a convenient place for Southeast Asia and even being involved in the politics of Southeast Asia. So Hong Kong thought that, it's not just enough that they'll be involved informally, but also formally. In other words, to upgrade the relationship instead of just being a host for Southeast Asian labor, to really make, to take advantage that they can deal with Southeast Asia, the 10 countries of Southeast Asia, with all the full force of tariffs, and to kind of have a mini WTO, so in which tariffs will be reduced to zero.
What are the chances of an agreement being reached, and how long do you think it will take?
So the target, as I said earlier, is 2016. And the way ASEAN has behaved so far, it means that if the interpretation is right, it means that this will go very quickly. Because at the moment, the tariff situation is that Hong Kong is a free port, so there are zero tariffs. But Southeast Asia varies from 3% to 10%, depending on the country and depending on the commodities involved. So the objective is to bring these all to zero. Now, in the case of the China-ASEAN, it took about 10 years for them to reach the agreement. In other words, there was a graduated reduction of tariffs from sector to sector, at the request, actually, of ASEAN. But in the case of Hong Kong ASEAN, since Hong Kong is already zero, really the burden is left with ASEAN, how far they can go to bring it to zero. Singapore is already zero. So, but in some countries, some commodities are zero, but some commodities, kind of protected industries, still can rise up to 10%.
I understand that. How about what form is the final agreement likely to have, in your opinion? A complete free trade, or will some trade restriction remain?
The normal way in which these things go is that there are some trade restrictions. Now, but if you take into account that actually Hong Kong is 93% services, in other words, Hong Kong really does not compete with ASEAN in terms of manufacturing, in terms of place where they can assemble cars. So Hong Kong is not competing with ASEAN in this term. So ASEAN will just look at Hong Kong in terms of services. Now, if you look in terms of services, some countries of ASEAN are good in certain types of services, like for example hotels, beaches, tourism. But that's all. It ends there. When you look at Hong Kong, okay, Hong Kong does not have the beaches that Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines have, diving and all of these tourism things. But Hong Kong is first class in terms of all other forms of services, for example, accounting, insurance, airline, transportation. So all this all ASEAN look up to Hong Kong when it comes to this kind of services. So that will be the form that it will take. So it will be, we are looking here at a free trade deal that is mostly services. And if at all there will be manufacturing or kind of commodities type, Hong Kong will just be a platform. Hong Kong will re-export it, just how Hong Kong deals with China. So Hong Kong, 70% of everything that enters Hong Kong is re-exported out. So Hong Kong just adds, insurance, accounting, all of that. So then it will be in that form.
Given what you just said, it seems like Southeast Asia is very important to Hong Kong in economic terms, and vice versa. Why does this region receive relatively little attention in Hong Kong?
Because of the nature of Hong Kong. Hong Kong was kind of born as a baby of China, but adopted by Britain.
Yeah.
So therefore, Hong Kong had no choice.
Okay.
When it was not yet formally part of China, everything they were looking at Britain all the time, and Britain did not abandon Hong Kong. Britain made Hong Kong the second most important financial center in the whole of Asia. After Tokyo, it's Hong Kong. So therefore, the British made very good use of Hong Kong and did quite a good job. Now, when Hong Kong became part of China, we formalized what was informal before. So we were always part of China in some way. We got cheap labor from Guangdong, we got the money of Shanghai, we got the gold, the finance industry, the movie industry, the textile industries of Shanghai. We all brought them, including the politicians of Shanghai, Tung Chihua, for example, from Shanghai. So many of our top minds, top politicians, top people in this territory come from Shanghai. So, but therefore, when we became formally part of China, we just stopped looking at Britain and looked at China. So therefore, we were, in a way, blinded. Even if I said earlier, Hong Kong was always a place where Southeast Asia looked forward to in terms of the neutrality and the efficiency of Hong Kong. Every time there was trouble in Southeast Asia, for example, Ho Chi Minh was in Hong Kong. Of course, Sun Yat-sen was also in Hong Kong. Jose Rizal, the national hero of Philippines, was in Hong Kong. Emilio Aguinaldo, the first president of the Philippine Republic, was also in Hong Kong. And if you come to today, Thaksin has a house in Ho Man Tin. And his unofficial headquarters, whenever he deals with Thailand, is the Marco Polo Hotel here in Canton Road in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has always been very well connected with Asia. Not to mention the movies that Hong Kong makes. They go to all the Chinese communities of Southeast Asia, and even Hong Kong has been hit with the bug of the Thai movies, and also Thailand has been a favorite destination of Hong Kong for their holidays. So you see the connection has always been there, but we never really made it kind of an official connection. For example, the only Hong Kong governor that visited Southeast Asia was the last one. Was Christopher Patton. So all the previous governors had no interest. But remember, when Christopher Patton left Hong Kong, where did he go? He went to Manila. The boat, the Britannia, sailed to Manila. And from Manila, he took an airplane going back to Britain.
Yes.
So you see, the connection is quite strong, but we really never recognized it. Because Hong Kong, as I said, has been naturally become so attached to Hong Kong, also to China, and especially in particular, Hong Kong was very, very much attached to Guangdong. So they looked to Guangdong very, very closely. And if you know, the little differences that they had with China was because Hong Kong was part of Guangdong, and Guangdong and Hong Kong talk a language which is not the language of Beijing. So the mountains are high, and the emperor is very far away. Still the same. It up to now, you see there is this tension that Hong Kong speaks Cantonese, and the central government wants to remove the strength of the Cantonese and wants to put Putonghua Mandarin into the television in Guangdong and all the rest of China. So this is the dynamics, and I think the FTA is going to be just kind of a picture of that reality. So that's why that Hong Kong is not part of the China ASEAN FTA. It's just a natural consequence of Hong Kong's own identity with regard to Southeast Asia.
I see. Let us move on Hong Kong ASEAN FTA negotiations and talk more about yourself. Can you tell us about more yourself, for instance, your academic background, and why did you come to CTU?
Well, my own doctoral dissertation was on what makes countries become attracted to China, or what can make them disengage from China. So it's a study of organization theory. For example, as an organization, ASEAN as an organization, why was it at times in its history against China, and at other times in its history in favor of China? So that was the whole issue. And so, of course, the most logical place to go, if I want to take this research further, is to come to Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is part of China. And myself, I was born in Southeast Asia. I was born in the Philippines. It's so natural. You know, Hong Kong has very good connections to every part of Southeast Asia. So whether it is Myanmar or Cambodia, Hong Kong has flights to these places.
I see. As you came from Southeast Asia, how do you feel Hong Kong and its role in the region?
Well, as I said, Hong Kong is like the New York of Southeast Asia. So imagine the whole ASEAN. ASEAN is about 600 million people. So, but they don't have what we call a New York. What is a New York? New York is the place in which, by itself, it almost looks like a country by itself. But of course, it cannot be a country. Like New York is not a country. But New York, for example, has 20 million people. It has all the big financial houses in the world, not just in the US. It maybe in terms of entertainment, maybe it has like 20 musicals going on at any given time, and maybe a dozen orchestras are performing every night, world-class orchestras. So the same in Hong Kong. So no other city in Southeast Asia can compare with what Hong Kong can offer. So in those terms. So why? Because Hong Kong being a free port and open to everyone. So it's so easy for all of these service and entities to come to Hong Kong, and for example, an orchestra to come here to perform for 2 nights. You don't have to take a long time to organize it. So Hong Kong makes it convenient and facilitates. We have all the kind of the cultural and services department. If you want a big trade event to be held, Hong Kong can easily arrange it. It's the only place in this part of the world in which you can land in the airport and in 40 minutes you're already resting in your hotel. So you can have a fast train, it take you in 12 minutes to the center of town, and then from the airport you can take a taxi or a free bus to your hotel. Which place in South? Not even in China. You'll have the convenience of Hong Kong, and it's also quite cheap. Quite cheap. In many places in Southeast Asia, you are expected to give a tip in Hong Kong, you take a taxi. If you don't have even enough money, the taxi driver will think you are so poor. He will tell you, okay, don't give me any, yeah, and I don't need to give me the full amount. So I use it. So it's that convenience that we have. You take the minibus. There are minibus bus stops for minibus. But if you tell the minibus stop, please, it will stop anywhere. So it's that kind of convenience that it is. Though it's a small city, it's very well organized. Probably it has the best transportation system, not only in Asia, but in the world.
Okay. Finally, can you please tell us some of your recent research and teaching, particularly that related to Southeast Asia?
Well, you see, Hong Kong is learning from things in Southeast Asia. For example, the things that's happening now, all the student protests, people power. They have discovered that people has a power, that if you put people together at this very moment that we are talking. So there are kind of difficulties in Admiralty. Some people want to remove the barriers that the students place there. So and the police. So there are three parties involved. Those against the barriers, they want the transportation system to continue as normal. And you have the students who want to stay there, and then you have the police who are in between. So these kind of things, this has happened already in Southeast Asia so many times. So this is kind of a history in Southeast Asia that actually Hong Kong can learn from. And so this is like one of the things that I'm looking at. And the other thing is the awareness of the Hong Kong people about certain things. Hong Kong is so rich and is so poor. It's so rich that it has a high income per capita, but it's very unequal in Hong Kong. As you know, in Hong Kong, 20% of the population own 80% of the economy, and the 20% is represented by 10 big families. And one of these 10 big families control estimated 1/3 of the whole Hong Kong economy. So just one family. So anything you touch, you are connected with that family. When you switch the light on here in Hong Kong, that family runs or owns the electric company that produces. When you buy a medicine, if you buy from the drugstore of that family. So in other words, okay, it's so rich in that sense, but it's also so poor that they own nothing except maybe a few crumbles of cement, the flat that they own, if they own a flat. So it's very deceiving. Many in Hong Kong now cannot even own a house. At least in Southeast Asia, they can own a house. They can own a piece of land. They are not rich, but they have something that they will call their own. But in Hong Kong, nothing. So what they will have is, if they happen to own their apartment, their flat, which is about 35% of Hong Kong on their flat, another 25% rent, and another 45 to 50% public housing. So therefore, in that sense, Hong Kong is poor. So it is a very interesting phenomenon that I think is good to keep on looking at, because Hong Kong has been changing, and in Hong Kong the change is very fast. In many places the change is slow, that you don't notice it from year to year, but in Hong Kong you notice these changes quite fast and quite significant, especially the time that we moved from being under the British to being part of China. Is a very interesting thing, not only from the anthropological point of view, meaning how you define yourself as a person. As you know, Hong Kong people, only 70% of Hong Kong people will say they are Chinese. They will say first they are Hong Kong people. They will not say they are Chinese. If you force them, they will say, okay, I'm Hong Kong Chinese. But they don't. So this is again very special for Hong Kong. This thing of the reluctance to say that they are Chinese. They are very convinced that they are from Hong Kong. So that's from the anthropological point of view. And then from the political point of view, this is the first time in world history that we are experiencing a one country, two systems. And now we are seeing that sometimes the one country, two systems actually means one country. And sometimes, yes, sometimes two systems. But when you push it to the corner, we are reminded by China that we have comprehensive jurisdiction over you. You better not forget. So, in other words, the one country is very much stressed. That's from the political point of view. And then from the economic point of view, we have big change. Before 1997, Hong Kong dollar was 1 and yuan was 80% of the Hong Kong dollar. So now it's the reverse. So I mean, just in 17 years, we have reversed the situation. And then now in the courses, for example, that I offer, I keep on raising my tuition fees, and the Hong Kong people cannot pay. Less and less Hong Kong people can apply. They are poor. The mainland, no matter how much you raise the tuition fees, you have hordes and hordes of mainland people. Money is not a problem for them. This is a situation that we never saw in the past. We always looked at the mainland as, there are poorer cousins. And so economically, that has changed. So of course you go to even other sectors, like the strength of our retail industries. Before, tourists who come here from all parts of the world, the Japanese came here to buy our Louis Vuitton and all these luxury goods. Now they are overtaken by the mainland Chinese rich people. The Japanese, you don't see them anymore. They used to come here because our goods are cheaper, because we don't have tax, cheaper than when you buy it in Japan. But then now the Chinese are the ones who come here. So I mean, you see, even in these things, look at the restaurants. Many of the menu are now in simplified Chinese. So again, as if we may not realize, but then once we realize it, the Hong Kong people feel disenfranchised, meaning the advantages they've had in the past is little by little slipping away. Not only the use of the hospitals, that's why these mainland mothers wanted to give birth here. And you see, unfortunately, our government is always reactive. They always react when there's already a problem. They don't look forward before meeting the potential problem. So this is again a very interesting thing to look at. And you don't see these things in many places, because Hong Kong is special in the sense that in the end, we are all Chinese. So in the end, why are we looking at these things as if they are big problems? And why have they become big problems? So there is something there in the dynamics of how Hong Kong has become part of the mainland that's very interesting to look at.
I see. Thank you for your time, Dr. Mondejar. This is the end of our interview. Thank you.